Hey guys, I'm back and I'm here to do my top reads of 2024. So, as you know, if you watched my goals video, you saw that I read 56 books, which is a far cry from what I really wanted to read, which was 70. But I have managed to pick out 10 of my top books here, and I think you will probably be surprised by a couple of them, but I think in general, yeah, I think it's a pretty good list. Okay, so just to let you know, there are not any new books on this list, I don't think. Yeah, there may be some that were new from 2023, but not from 2024. And there are two rereads on here, so that's kind of interesting as well. So let's get started with the first book on the list, which is James Baldwin's Another Country. Okay, so this book is a fantastic book to read, particularly in a group, and we read this one in my Read So Lit book club over on Patreon. This was the second reading of the book for me. This is a book that is set in the 1950s, and it's between Harlem, Greenwich Village, and France. And the book starts off introducing us to a character called Rufus Scott. And Rufus Scott is a jazz musician, a little bit down on his luck. And from there, the story unfolds. Okay, let me tell you. Baldwin killed it in this one. I mean, if you have not read Baldwin, this would not be a bad place to start. The dialogue is fantastic. There's so much going on in the book between the dialogue and then how he sets everything up. You have this motley crew of friends, a white couple that lives in Greenwich Village. They kind of have a kind of bohemian lifestyle. Then you have an Italian American guy, and then you have Rufus's sister, and you have a couple characters as well that are minor characters throughout the book, and then you have some other characters that are in France. And what he does is, through the interactions of these friends, through the difficulties of their relationships, we find out a lot of things that hurdle the discussions on race, gender, sexuality, expectations, and just so many other things, relationships. Sky's the limit. The thing that's interesting about the book is the way that James Baldwin uses dialogue. It's just phenomenal. My second reading, I picked up on even more things the second time than I did the first time. So it's one of those books you can read it and reread it and you'll probably still see things. Highly recommend it. It was a fantastic experience reading the second time, and I'll probably read it a third. Recommend it. Okay, my number 2 book on the list is Praisesong for the Kitchen Ghost. The full title is Praisesong for the Kitchen Ghost, Stories and Recipes from 5 Generations of Black Country Cooks. Okay, now, if you've been following for a while, you know how much I love Crystal Wilkinson. Everything she writes is just so powerful and so meaningful and so intentional. And this is another one of those books. In this book, she explores her 5 generations of family through cooking and memory. And that's why this book is, I would say it's more like a memoir that has recipes included within the story, or within the retelling of her family story. It's not a very long book, but it's just what you need. It gives us a lot of understanding of who she is. She's a Black woman that grew up in Appalachia, And as we keep forgetting, Black people live in Appalachia too, but I know people forget. And she does an excellent job of reminding us of some of the things around country cooking and country life, her family members, her pictures. It's just a feast for the soul, for the eyes, and for the spirit. I highly recommend it. Makes a great gift as well for people who are interested in family and cooking. Highly recommend it. The next book on my list is The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Pitts Jr. This is a book that we read in my Read So Lit read along, and I think it was in 2020. Yeah, it was in 2020. And this book is absolutely fantastic. This book is maddening. It's informative. It's just so many things. So this is a story of three main characters. It is set in the US, but also partially in Europe during World War II. The story opens up on the attack on Pearl Harbor, but essentially the book will then introduce us to a character called George, who is a white Southern man who is on ship when the harbor is attacked. And from there, we are introduced back in the US to some other characters, a Black woman and her father, and a few other characters. Now, the story focuses on sort of like the fallout a little bit of World War II from both sides of the ocean. So what the soldiers are going through, but then also what people are going through back at home. We're in the middle of Jim Crow, segregation. Things are very difficult and very hard because all the men are at war and the women are taking up jobs in factories. Now, some of the men that are left behind, because of different reasons why they can't go to war. And from there, we will see a series of events that will take us through understanding better the complications of race in America. Let me tell you, this book is so on point. I feel like it should be one of those books that should be required reading, okay? Because Leonard Pitts Jr., he breaks it down in this one. Now, I can't talk enough about this book because I love it so much. More good news. He has written a sequel to this book, and it's called 54 Miles. And it came out last summer. I think it was in July 2024. So I highly recommend you go and read that as well. We will be reading that in my Read So Lit book club on Patreon in January. And we're going to be lucky enough to discuss the book with the author. So we're very thrilled about that. So I highly recommend it. I don't know what you're waiting for. I can't say it enough. I keep saying, read that damn book. Okay. But read the damn book. Okay. The next book on my list is King, The Life of Martin Luther King by Jonathan Egg, I think is how he pronounces his name. So this is a nonfiction book. It was one of the first nonfiction books I read of 2024, and it was a group read. And I did this over on Instagram, along with Celeste. And let me tell you, this book, all right, Jonathan Egg, this particular biography is the first biography apparently that's been written extensively about King. I think it's been 40 years is what I had read somewhere. Now, the thing is, I think we as Americans grow up with certain ideas around King, who he was and what he did. And I feel like that depends on what household you grew up in and how your people, whoever your people are, talked about King will determine what you know about him and what you don't know about him. This biography is one you should definitely read because Jonathan Egg basically gives a lot of scope and dimension to Martin Luther King, who has been literally reduced to "I have a dream" speech and a few other cliched phrases snatched from his speeches. And what Jonathan Egg does is he gives us a full scope vision of who King was, down from his good points into a few of his bad points. A few bad points. This was a very flawed but determined, intelligent, and admired and charismatic man. And King basically gives you the full scope of that. And he does it in a enchanting way. So, for example, when you're reading this nonfiction, you're not going to be going, "Oh my God, when is it going to be over? Oh, it's so pedantic. Oh, it's just..." No, the writing is on point. Very easy to read. It flows brilliantly. It's not at all hard to sit down and read 100 pages. Just that good. Now, the book, I think it's over 400 pages, almost close to 500 pages, I think, but well worth the read. This is something that you really should read if you're interested in knowing King for more than just a few cliched phrases. Highly recommend it. The next book on my list is this one right here, The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This is another fantastic novel. Abraham Verghese is a brilliant storyteller. This particular story is set in India. I think it's on the Malabar coast. Let me just make sure. Yeah, the Malabar coast. It spans years 1900 to 1977. Three generations of a family. And it starts with a 12-year-old girl whose father has just died, and she has to go and marry a much older man, but in another community. She's Christian, and the place where she's going, they're not Christian. But it's also, there's a lot of upheaval because she's 12, and I think her to-be husband is like in his 40s or something. It's kind of creepy in the beginning. But this story really does not only show us the route of this family from generation to generation, but we're also following the upheavals, the ebbs and flows of India as a country. And you can learn so many things. Like I learned, I didn't know what some things were, and I learned what they were. It's just so informative, but it's very sweeping, and it's easy to get swept up into this novel and caring about these characters. These are full life, filled up characters. They're just unforgettable. Big Amachi is unforgettable. I highly recommend it. I highly also recommend the audio for people who aren't into reading big books and are afraid because they know it's like 600 and something pages. They're going to have difficulty. I highly recommend the audiobook because it's Abraham Verghese that reads the audiobook. He does all the accents and everything super well. Really good audiobook. I did immersive reading, and that worked very well for me, which immersive reading is when you listen and read simultaneously. And it just was fantastic. The characters in this book are unforgettable. I mean, I still think about Big Amachi even today. So highly recommend this one. I also recommend that you check out Cutting for Stone, which was one of the first books that I read by him. Although that's not his debut, I don't think. But Cutting for Stone was excellent as well. told about another part of the world. I think it's in Ethiopia that it's set. He's just a great writer. Just read the book. Read the book. The next book I have on my list is this one right here, One Blood by Deneen Milner. This was the Read So Lit read-along book for summer in July 2024, where I discussed the books with Michael and Tatiana. And let me tell you, One Blood, this is a really, really good book. Okay, so the author of this book is called Deneen Milner. Deneen Milner has written lots of books, but she's also done lots of screenplays for film and TV film and movie film. So this book, One Blood, is a generational story as well, focusing on the women of the family. It starts in post-segregation Virginia with the main character who's called Grace. And she starts off this family saga, and she has been raised by her grandmother, Mama, for, since she was born. And now Mama has a problem. I won't say what it is because I don't want to give anything away. And Grace has to flee Virginia. So it's from her fleeing Virginia that the story develops, and we learn more about what's going to happen with this family. So the thing about this book is it feels comfortable when you're reading it. The characters are, you either hate some of them, and I mean you hate them to the core, or you love them and you want to see more of them. And when they're not there, you feel it that they're not there and you want them to be there. And I feel like that's something that is particularly good about One Blood, is that her way of developing her characters is very ingenious. It just seems like it flows off the page with no effort, and you are into the story. It's going to discuss a lot of different aspects: mother-daughter relationships, husband-wife relationships, all kinds of things. Things like expectations from children of their parents and vice versa, husband-wife expectations, racial differences, and just lots of things are going to be on your path reading One Blood. But the thing that's most particular about it is this woman. It's like this womanist side of the novel is just so familiar and comfortable. Like I said, when you're reading, I don't know another way to describe it other than that. It's very comfortable when you're reading it, and even though bad things can be happening, it's almost like you feel like they're a member of your family or something. You feel drawn to this book, and you feel drawn to knowing more about what's going to happen to these different women and these different instances in their lives. Just fantastic read. It's on the long side, the book. I think it's almost a little over 400 pages, maybe 460, something like that. But it's really worthwhile, and you don't feel like you're reading such a long book. But so good. I highly recommend it. Read it. It's really good. Okay, the next book on my list is this one right here, Razorblade Tears. This is by S.A. Cosby. What a fantastic read. This was my third read from S.A. Cosby last year. I feel like he's the author that I really discovered because I literally went from book to book. I still have All Sinners Bleed to read, and I want to read that before his new book comes out this year. He's got a new book coming out called King of Ashes. But Razorblade Tears is about this main character who's called, I think his name is Ike. And Ike has been out of jail for about 15 years. And he has gone on the straight and narrow. He has his mechanics business. He ain't playing. He got his business tight, okay? So what happens? His son is killed, and his son is gay. So his son and his son's lover are both killed, and that changes everything for Ike. He becomes very reflective, and he is, regretting that he didn't tell his son how much he really loved him because he was critical about his homosexuality. So what winds up happening is Ike and the other father of his son's boyfriend wind up teaming up. So the two fathers team up. So Ike is black and the other man is white. I think his name is Buddy Lee. And they get together and they go on their mission to find the people that killed their sons and to get revenge on them. Oh my God. This book is so, so, so good. It is like nail biting. It's just funny. It also gives a good critique on race relations in America, while at the same time watching these two men both not wanting to admit to each other that they both have made the same mistake, which is to, not love and treat their sons well when they were there because of homosexuality, and now they both regret it. And we're inside of their head, and we can hear Ike's thoughts, and we can hear how much he regrets. And with each path towards finding the killer, it's like he's having his coming to Jesus regarding his son. Oh my God, it's so, 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 so good. Really, I mean, out of the three that I've read, My Darkest Prayer, Blacktop Wasteland, Razorblade Tears is 5-star top. Gotta read it. Second place would be Blacktop Wasteland. Forget about My Darkest Prayer. It's not worth it. Forget about it. But yeah, really, really wonderful read. And also it reads super fast. Like you sit down, you could read it in an afternoon if depending on how fast you read, but I think you could read it in 2 afternoons or 2 or 3 sittings. It's just that good. Highly recommend it. Really, really good experience. Okay, the next book on my list is this one right here, An Untamed State by Roxane Gay. Okay, now, y'all, it's literally taken me 10 years to read this book. And this book came out, it was 2010. Yeah, I think, no, 2014, sorry. It came out in 2014, and I bought it, and it sat on my shelf until last year when I said, girl, you're gonna have to get your mind right and read this book. Okay, that's what I say for the people that are new here. Welcome. Thank you for coming. When I say you got to get your mind right, that means up here got to be solid, because what you're about to read is going to be tough. So this got to be solid. If this ain't solid, then you don't need to be reading it. So it took me 10 years because I said, no, you got to do this, girl, because you got to read this book. It's literally one of the only books by Roxane Gay I have not read. I've read most of all of her stuff. That is her fiction stuff. So I decided to read the book, and I picked it up. And basically, this is the story of Mireille Jameson. I think it's her last name. Yeah. Mireille Duval Jameson. So Mireille is on holiday with her son and her husband, and they're in Port-au-Prince at her parents' home. And they decide to take the son to the beach. So they are leaving the estate of her father's estate when armed men surround their car and kidnap Mireille out of the car. So what happens when you get kidnapped in Haiti? The next thing you do is ask for a ransom. So they ask for a ransom, but her dad starts to stall about wanting to pay the ransom. So now Mireille is victim to all of the crap that these men put her through while she's been kidnapped. Whoo, child, get your mind right. I don't even know if get your mind right is the right thing. I don't think that's severe enough warning. I will say here, trigger warning for abuse, rape, and all kinds of other mess. If you can't do that, then just don't do this book. Just don't do it, girl. Don't do it, guy. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. Now, I put it in my top 10 books because I feel like Roxane Gay gets to the core and the crux of what it is to be a person that has been in this situation, being, abused, kidnapped, raped, etc. She does go into the psyche of it while she's in captivity. It's really hard to read some parts, but I managed to do it. I don't know how I did, but I think it's because I said you've got to forge on. Otherwise, if you stop, you're not going to get through it. Anyway, so not only does she do that, she then split screens it, and we get what's going on over at the dad's home. So you've got the mom and dad's reaction. You've got her sister's reaction, who's back in the States. You've got her husband, who's going crazy. He doesn't know what to do. He's in a foreign country. He just wants to go out in the street and yell and scream and punch people out and try to find. He can't do none of that because he's not on his turf. He doesn't know what's going on. His father-in-law refuses to pay. He doesn't understand. He personally doesn't have the money that they're asking. It's a lot of money. So you have that going on the other side. And then you have the captivity part, which is how the person that kidnapped her is called the commander. And you see how the commander really despises her, despises who she is and what she represents, because she represents the haves of Haiti. Even though she lives in the States now, she still is back home, and she represents, in his eyes, the haves. And he feels like he's one of the have-nots. And so he's going to take from her no matter what until he can get what he originally asked for. And if it means that he destroys her in the process, he does not care. Let me tell you, this book right here is written to perfection, because not only do we get all of that, but then Roxane goes even further, and she takes us through recovery period and stuff like that. So it's not just a book that is written off of being salacious or something like that. You can really tell that she put a lot of thought into this. And if you read her memoir, Hunger, then you know how she could write this fiction novel and be so real about things. So I highly recommend it. It's 5-star, top notch, but you got to get your mind right. Get your mind right. If your mind ain't right, skip it. Just don't do it. Okay? Don't say I didn't warn you. Okay? Got to get your mind right. Okay, the next book I have on my list is this one right here. It's called La Debacle, or The Debacle, which is book 19 in the Rougon Macau series that I read over 2 years and 3 months with my friend Anna. So this one is on my list because it was a book that stunned me. But not only that, I learned some things that I didn't know. So this book takes place during the Franco-Prussian War, which was in 1870. And this story follows soldiers being brave and being unlucky and like surviving with injury or dying, all of this while going through this particular war. Now, the thing that really got me was this war didn't really need to happen. Like, it only happened because Napoleon wanted more control. And he was willing to go up against the Prussian army to do that, knowing full damn well they didn't have enough men. They didn't have enough, and I mean men, I mean skilled men. They didn't have enough money. They didn't have enough anything to be doing the war with the Prussians. But here we are. There they were running around doing this war with the Prussians. Now, the thing is, you're reading it and you're thinking, my God, people are losing their lives for nothing. Literally. They are literally marching in circles around in the countryside, trying to so-called go to war with the Prussians, when in fact, most of the time it felt like they were trying to avoid them. But in parts of the book where you see that the soldiers didn't have enough food, they didn't have enough water, they weren't skilled, some of them. And it was just devastating. Now, at the same time, you have on the other side the civilian population, and you see what they're going through during this war. And it's no piece of cake either, because when these soldiers come and they take over a town, they take over the town. They take over your house and all the rest of that mess. So, like, they show how Napoleon goes to this one town, and he goes to the richest person's house in town and literally took over their entire house and put that lady up in the attic. That lady had the attic as the run of the house, and Napoleon took all her stables, all her rooms, all of it. The only thing he left her was the attic thing upstairs. I was like, this book right here. It was amazing, though, to read, because Zola did a fantastic job of putting us in the position of what it must have been like at this time to have to deal with war. And it was really, really good. But it was frustrating, and it was maddening. Maddening and frustrating. But I think it was written extremely well. Now, apparently, in literary circles, this book is compared to War and Peace. And I guess it's because, now I have not read War and Peace. I just know War and Peace is a lot longer than the Debacle. The Debacle was like maybe, 600, 700 pages, something like that. I know War and Peace is probably almost 1,000, but they probably have similarities in they really do get into the crux, the real nitty gritty of what it is to be a soldier under difficult conditions, where you don't have any control over what you do. You're told to do things and you have to do them. And in some cases, you have to survive. So you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And we're seeing that in this book as well. And I'm sure in War and Peace is a lot the same. Yeah. But I highly recommend that you read the Rougon Macau series. It's 20 books. I don't feel like you need to read all 20 books. I feel like you can read them, whichever ones you want to read. We chose to read them from date of publication 1 to 20. And we enjoyed reading it that way, but we really wanted to read all of them. But you could just read one here and one there. That's possible as well. But this one, highly recommend if you're interested in this Franco-Prussian War, which I didn't know much about, but now I'm just like, girl, I'm looking at Napoleon with the side eye. All right. Anyway. Okay. So the last book on my list is this one right here, Les Misérables, and this is by Victor Hugo. This was the read-along that we did in October and November to read this big giant classic. And I am so happy that I finally got a chance to read this one. This is a book that's set, I think it's 1862, and it explores prison reform, I guess you could say. Now, the main character is Jean Valjean, and he is in prison for 19 years for stealing some bread. Okay? So we see how he decides when he gets out of jail, what's he going to do with himself? And the first thing he realizes is nobody wants him to eat in their restaurant. Nobody wants him to sleep in their inn. Nobody wants to give him a job, and they don't even want him to sleep on a bench. When you are coming out of prison, so-called you've done your time, people don't want you around. They say, oh no, he's a criminal, he's a criminal. And not only that, but they spread the word fast, okay? So not only that, he's got like some kind of identification papers, and they have a mark on them, and that mark shows that he has been to prison. What this book explores is how society is like a part of the reason why criminals that are reformed can't actually become a full functioning citizen of society, because society won't let them. And what we do is we go on this journey of how Jean Valjean redeems himself over time. And he does that through doing lots of different acts throughout the novel. But at the same time, people are still very much not wanting to trust people that have just gotten out of prison. But what does Victor Hugo do in this novel is he introduces us to this character of Jean Valjean, who is a larger-than-life character, one that you will not forget, okay? This is a character that is, now I understand fully why the French love Jean Valjean so much. Now I understand, because I've read the book. I get it. But not only that, there is this development of characters throughout the book that is done extremely well. So Jean Valjean is larger than life. Cosette is larger than life. Not only that, but we have the city of Paris is larger than life. Not only that, you also have some areas around Paris, like there's a little bit in Normandy, but Paris is the biggest, I think, city that is really could be considered a character in the book. Now I'm going to get to some of the downsides. Yes, it's a bit verbose. Yes, maybe he could have done without talking about certain things in the book that feel like service announcements, which I didn't mind the service announcements. I like those because you learn something in them, and you learn something that's going to help you for the next part of the book that is about to come. So I didn't mind those, but I can see why some people would mind those. But here again, if you love classics the way I love classics, you're going to suck it up for that. And you're going to enjoy those service announcements, and you're going to start to enjoy those service announcements. And you're going to learn things through those service announcements. So yeah, it's almost 1,400 and something pages to read. It's well worthwhile. This particular version that I read is called the Penguin. I think this is the Penguin. I can't remember what it's called. The Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition is what this one is called. So it's pretty floppy. It's got these French flaps in the front and the back. And it has a lot of endnotes and footnotes and stuff. But this is, I feel like if you're wanting to read this one, you definitely should give it a go. If you're thinking about French classics, this is the one. Read this, read it. I've got a lot of tabs, I know, but we discussed this, Michael and Tatiana and I. If you're interested in watching that, I will link below all of the different live shows we've done for the various, because there's a couple books in here where there have been some lives. So that is it. Those are all of my books. I hope you enjoyed watching this. Comment below and tell me if you are interested in reading any of these, or if you read any of these and love them or dislike them. Let's talk about it, people, and I will see you in the next video very soon. Bye.